It's clearly a lie, but they keep saying the same lie over and over again, right? That's how you know you're being scammed. So back when Nathan Oakley kept saying things like science proves this, science proves, I like took him and said, Nathan, you know science doesn't prove anything, right? He's like, yes, it does. Science proves everything. Like, no, science can't prove anything. It's impossible because you don't have all the parameters. He wanted to argue with me about it. So they keep perpetrating or perpetuating this lie.
Hi, I'm Nathan Oakley, and this video will be a response to Jeranism. I was intending to go through his video piece by piece, pulling it apart, but instead I'm just going to read out a few citations and then let his video play out in full, so you can hear the affirmation bias, Google parroted nonsense that he spewed in regards to science. So my first citation is from Biology for Majors 2, Forming a Hypothesis. When constructing scientific experiments, researchers develop hypotheses to guide experimental design. A hypothesis is a suggested explanation that is both testable and falsifiable. You must be able to test your hypothesis, and it must be possible to prove your hypothesis true or false. Next citation is from genome.org. Students are taught that the proper way to do science is through the following steps. First, devise a hypothesis, and then design experiments that will prove or disprove their theory. The conscientious scientist follows this with a deliberate collection of data from these carefully crafted experiments, and the data prove or disprove the aforementioned theory, therefore placing a new stepping stone in the path through the jungle of our unknown universe. It seems obvious that this is the appropriate way of moving forward in science. In fact, in most published papers, the hypothesis is put forth, followed by the experimental proof, and ending with a restatement of the veracity of the theory and potential future steps. Next citation is from ThoughtCo. A hypothesis is a tentative answer to a scientific question. A testable hypothesis is a hypothesis that can be proved or disproved as a result of testing, data collection, or experience. Only testable hypothesis can be used to conceive and perform an experiment using the scientific method. Requirements for a testable hypothesis. In order to be considered testable, 2 criteria must be met. It must be possible to prove that the hypothesis is true. It must be possible to prove that the hypothesis is false. It must be possible to reproduce the results of the hypothesis. That's Anne-Marie Helmenstein, Biomedical Sciences, PhD. Next is from Geosociety, Nature of Science. Experiment. Once the hypothesis has been established, it is time to test it. The process of experimentation is what sets science apart from other disciplines, and it leads to discoveries every day. An experiment is designed to prove or disprove the hypothesis. If your prediction is correct, you will not be able to reject the hypothesis. That was Christine McClelland in The Nature of Science and the Scientific Method. The next citation is from Dr. Craig Venter. You know, there are some things we can do in science in terms of proving certain things in life we discover. Dr. Craig Venter. Science is based on an empirical method, and it has a logic behind it which leaves the method with empiricism. You suppose the cause of a natural effect that you observed. Now that supposed cause is the thing that you will vary to see if it actually causes it. That would be an alternative hypothesis, the logic being if A, then B. If I vary this which I assume causes that, it will cause it. If A, then B. A valid hypothesis also has a null. if A, not B. That would be you vary, that which you assume causes the effect you are studying, and it does not cause it. Upon completion of a scientific experiment based on a valid hypothesis, you will either prove the first supposition if A, then B, or prove the null if A, not B. Regardless of which is proven, you're gonna be proving something. Now, if I'm going to be accused of lying when there is a logic and empiricism attached to this method that has advanced humanity, with examples of people not dying as a result of the method getting, and I'll be called a liar by Jeranism for that.
Don't understand what they're talking about, try and laugh at me or poke fingers at me. Because again, if they have a point, here's the thing about, how do I explain this? Here's how you know you're being scammed. And let's think back to what's happened over the last, 2 years. And when you're being scammed is when somebody tells you a lie, and then you either point out that it's a lie or it's clearly a lie, but they keep saying the same lie over and over again, right? That's how you know you're being scammed. So back when Nathan Oakley kept saying things like science proves this, science proves, I took him and said, Nathan, you know science doesn't prove anything, right? He's like, yes, it does. Science proves everything. Like, no, science can't prove anything. It's impossible because you don't have all the parameters. He wanted to argue with me about it. So they keep perpetrating or perpetuating this lie. So to me, you're being scammed. Why? When you've pointed out, look at if we search right here. I'm just going to search. Does science prove things? Now, we would think, of course, science is going to say they prove things, right? But they don't. They don't even say it. Because anybody in their right mind is smart enough to go, nope, that doesn't make any sense. How would science prove anything? Because in order to prove something, you have to have all possible scenarios included. So I don't care what test you do. Number one, who gives the results of scientific experiments and tests? Is it human beings or is it God? Pretty sure it's human beings. Do human beings have biases? Are they confused sometimes? Did they mistakenly think something was true when it wasn't? Did they kind of fudge some result? Of course, it's human beings. So every single science experiment that's ever been done has been run through the filter of a human being. Okay, so that right there tells you science cannot prove things. But look at science proof is a myth, okay? Except for its complete lie. While they provide very strong evidence for those theories, they aren't proof. Common misconceptions about science. Real scientists never use the word scientific proof because they know no such thing exists. But Nathan Oakley will tell you that these are all wrong. Science does prove things. Yeah, I'm sure. Forget what you've read. Science can't prove a thing. Understanding science, how science really works. So science can accept or reject ideas based on evidence, but it doesn't prove or disprove them. Scientific evidence, concept of scientific proof. Scientific evidence is evidence that serves to either support or counter a scientific theory or hypothesis, but it does not provide proof. Scientific proof. There is no such thing as proof. So only Nathan Oakley knows the truth about all these things. So they want to spend time on their show making fun of me because I said science can't prove things. Science cannot prove anything. How would it ever do that? Think about it. If no matter what you try and prove, and these guys, I heard them say the other day, oh, science proof is that the water boils at 100 degrees. That's not proof of anything. Number one, what kind of water? Are you talking about distilled water? Are you talking about ocean water? Are you talking about dirty river water? Because guess what? It's all different. Okay? So there is no, you can't just say water boils at 100 degrees. That's stupid. That's not proof of it. There's no proof of that. It depends on exact, and then you don't know all the parameters that go into things. So nothing can ever be proven by science. So if somebody has been pointed out this, I pointed this out to them numerous times. What do? They sit on their debate channel and laugh at me. So I know that whatever they're doing over there is perpetrating a scam. They're scamming people somehow. I don't know if it's for money or what they're doing, but they're not being honest, which means they're scamming. So because if they can keep perpetuating a lie, the lie is that science can prove things. No, it cannot. So it's that simple. I don't know why do you have to be on that side? Well, the side is because once they've stated something over there, they must stick to it. They're not allowed to change their minds over there on Flat Earth Debate because they are militant and gross about it. So once you've yelled at people and told them to lick your balls and you're an idiot and you're an embarrassment, once you've said that, you can't go back on what you've said. You can't be like, oh, you know what, Austin, we're sorry. You're right. It does make sense what you're saying about the ether. They can't do that. They can't do it. So what do they have to do? They just double down and keep spitting out their same nonsense, and they can keep doing it, and you watch as their numbers dwindle and dwindle and dwindle and dwindle. It takes time, but that's what happens when you aren't honest with people. And science does not prove anything. Never has. What did Nathan Oakley tell me one time? Oh yeah, well science proved that scurvy is a lack of vitamin C or something. It's like, no, science didn't prove anything. First of all, scurvy isn't a thing. Scurvy is a word that we gave for the lack of vitamin C. Okay, so because you gave a word to something, you can't then say science proved that the word that we gave something is the definition of that word that we gave it. What are you talking about? So they learned that people were getting sick from a lack of vitamin C. Okay, that's what they learned. Now, is that proof? No, it's not proof of anything. Okay, now is it strong evidence? Yes, of course things are strong evidence. I'm not saying, by no means am I saying that with scientific tests, you can't get very strong evidence that appears in every fashion to be what you would call proof, but it doesn't prove things. So to walk around and say science proved this is just, it's ridiculous. How could science prove anything? Did the experimenters know all possible scenarios and all possible conditions? Of course not, right? Like there could literally be, so let's think about like, so the sun burns your skin, right? But that's not from the light. That's from the light that we can't see, right? UV rays. So imagine back in 1600, these guys were walking around and they wanted to do an experiment of why people were getting sunburnt. And so they did a little test and they figured out that the sun is what's burning people's arms. And they said, oh, light then is what's burning people's skin, right? Scientific proof. Well, no, they didn't know all of the things that were possible, meaning they have no idea about UV light. So, and even now, even if now we say, well, UV light is the reason, well, we don't know all possible things. So it's our best guess. It's the closest we can get to truth. Okay, that's it. It is not. Landry, did you sign up for Patreon? I saw that today, or I saw somebody named Landry. Anyway, so the idea when I hear, and this is why I laugh at Neil deGrasse Tyson. He's the only one who says science is true whether or not you believe in it. Guess what? If science proved things, then science would be true whether or not you believed in it. But that's the biggest joke of a statement of all time. Let's look at here. Where does it say, does science prove everything? Wait, I wanted to find the one. When theory becomes a fact, who decides? What is a theory? Can science prove things false? What is true? Does science prove things? There was a good article that I was going to, oh yeah, this one. This is a article I've read in the past, Scientific American. Hello, are you going to resolve today? Thank you. So this is a good little, I think it's here. So it's talking about, because July 1st, 2021. So it says the COVID crisis has led many scientists to take up arms, or at least keyboards, to defend their enterprise. And to be sure, science needs defenders these days, but in their zeal to fight back against vaccine rejection and other forms of science denial, some scientists say things that just aren't true. And you can't build trust if things you're saying are not trustworthy. One popular move is to insist that science is right, full stop, and that once we discover the truth about the world, we are done. Anyone who denies such truths, they suggest, is stupid, ignorant, or fatuous. Or, as Nobel Prize-winning physicist Steven Weinberg said, even though a scientific theory is in a sense a social consensus, it is unlike any other sort of consensus in that it is culture-free and permanent. Well, no. Even a modest familiarity with the history of science offers many examples of matters that scientists thought they had resolved. Right, which is why when Neil deGrasse Tyson says whether or not you believe in science is true, it's like, no, dipshit. What about when it wasn't true in the past? Was it true then? Well, of course not, because we've come to a more clear, concise definition, or we've come to a more accepted definition. So you cannot say what Neil deGrasse Tyson says, nor can you say what FED says. No, science does not prove things. And why would you take that position? It doesn't even make sense. So, well, no, even a modest, here we go, only to be reconsidered. Some familiar examples are Earth is the center of the universe. Now, again, we can ignore some of their dumb things now, because here's the thing. If they knew the truth, and we're going to get into this when we get into some debate stuff, if they knew the truth about Edwin Hubble and why he chose to go the other direction, now they've been all taught, just like we were in school, that they looked at both and they realized one was better evidence. No. And now this is why we do what we do. This is why you watch the show, is because we've determined, based on going back and looking at what Edwin Hubble said and these guys, that they said observationally, we are the center of the universe, but we must stay away from that. And so to stay away from that, we choose spatial curvature, we choose this and this, and then they went in that direction. And these idiots think that that's some sort of scientific change. Some familiar examples are Earth as the center of the universe, the absolute nature of time and space, the stability of continents, the cause of infectious diseases, which will change again, by the way, because we are going through that now. Science is a process of learning and discovery. Sometimes we learn that what we thought was right is wrong, which is great. This is why science is awesome. Not scientism, science, okay? Science can also be understood as an institution or a better set of institutions that facilitates this work. To say that science is true or permanent is like saying that marriage is permanent. At best, it is a bit off-key. Marriage today is very different from what it was in the 16th or 18th century, and so are most of our laws of nature. Anyway, I won't go on and on. That's Scientific American if you want to look it up. And clearly, I couldn't find where people were talking about. They're like, oh, Nathan went after you yesterday. I don't know where that was. Was trying to find it. Couldn't find it. But I did want to show, well, congratulations to Austin for his debate against Brian's logic, which was like knocking your head against the wall. Because the FED guys do the same thing. They get backed into a corner and they just talk strangely. It's like, and I can't even explain it. Brian's logic was all over the place, not understanding for 1 second what Austin was saying over and over again. They just keep repeating things they've heard, like from Nathan or something. The entire idea of gravity and whether things fall just based on relative density. Well, we've now seen with the Van de Graaff generator that you can adjust something, whether it floats or sinks, based on its electrical potential. And so therefore, it makes sense to me that, the electricity could set the down direction. Everything else is handled by density and buoyancy. So it's not even really worth talking about the electrical part, because that just sets a down direction. That's it. Everything else is handled through density. But here's the problem, is those guys keep going back and they're like, oh, well, why don't you make my phone rise in the generator, in the Van de Graaff generator? It's like, what are you talking about? A phone is a hugely dense item. Nobody's saying that you can make things levitate that are heavy. That we're talking about little things like you put a piece of paper on the ground, then you turn on the generator, it creates an electrical field, and then the thing floats. Well, that's a tiny piece of paper. But what you did by making it float is you adjusted it, and so at least we can say, not proof, that it could set the down direction. So why would Flat Earth Debate be so against that idea? Why not just admit, yeah, the generator does do that, so therefore you're probably right. It probably does set the downward direction, and density and buoyancy weigh the rest out. No, they want to argue with it as if, well, what does that mean? That the electrical goes away? Electromagnetism just disappears? No, it's still there. So what are you going to do with it? Well, we don't even talk about it because we just stick to our same talking points and we stick to whatever Anthony Riley came up with 2 years ago, and we're just going to stay with that no matter what. So for me, I weigh options. That's why I was in the middle. One time I was on their side, looked at it, Bob's talking this. I'm like, I don't still agree with that, until I saw some of the experiments Zack did, at which time I said, oh, well, we can't deny that that's happening. So therefore, it makes sense to me that if anything set the down, it would be that. So let me go here real quick and see if I've got this set up for, no, I wanted to go to...
This is from Geosociety, Nature of Science. Experiment. Once the hypothesis has been established, it is time to test it. The process of experimentation is what sets science apart from other disciplines, and it leads to discoveries every day. An experiment is designed to prove or disprove the hypothesis. If your prediction is correct, you will not be able to reject the hypothesis. That was Christine McClelland in The Nature of Science and the Scientific Method. The next citation is from Dr. Craig Venter. You know, there are some things we can do in science in terms of proving certain things in life we discover. Dr. Craig Venter.